everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, we have a really special webinar for anybody who's preparing for their student visa applications to study in the United States. Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm a former U.S. visa officer and director of consular strategy here at Argo Visa. Today, I'm speaking to three of my colleagues about changes that we've been seeing for students applying for their U.S. visas, and to discuss some tips for anybody who's applying this year for their student visa at a U.S. embassy or consulate. So why don't we start with introductions? Daniel, you're the newest member of our team, so why don't you start first?
Yeah, hi there, everyone. I'm Daniel Evenson. I worked for the Department of State as a Foreign Service officer for about 15 years, served mostly in China, as well as in Ottawa, Canada. I have done more student visa interviews than I can count, many, many thousands of them. So yeah, good to be here.
Thank you. Maggie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Maggie Ramsey. I'm a former U.S. consular officer. I worked for the Department of State for over 11 years. My postings were in India, Poland, Canada, and Washington, D.C. And I, too, have done a lot of student visas, probably tens of thousands, and I love speaking to students. So I'm happy to be here today.
Yeah, Maggie's also our DS-160 guru and reviews DS-160s on behalf of Argo Visa to make sure that those applications are as polished and making as good of a first impression as possible. Last but not least, Tracy.
Hey, everybody. I'm Tracy. I was a U.S. diplomat for 11 years, like Maggie. I served in New Delhi, India, and Bogota, Colombia as a consular officer, and then later in New York as a different position altogether. And yeah, I've done, like I said, thousands and thousands of student visas, particularly in India, where there are so many students. Really passionate about getting our students there, our international students to the U.S.
Yeah, let's start there. Tracy, you are our go-to person for really complicated cases. So let's start with you. There's been a report recently. It's not official because the Department of State hasn't published their official refusal rates for 2025 yet, but there's an unofficial report saying that over 60% of students applying in India in 2025 were refused. That's a really, really high refusal rate for a country that has a lot of credible students that come to the US every year to study. What do you think of the new refusal rates, and what does it mean for students applying this year?
Yeah, it's not great news. We certainly don't like to hear that, at least those of us who work on this side of things like to see, a higher refusal rate. And I'm not totally surprised that the unofficial numbers are looking high. It's definitely, I think what we kind of all have been seeing is a little bit higher refusals kind of going up. I'm not surprised, especially considering the revocations that happened last fall, I think it was, particularly out of India, seeing those kind of high number of student visas revoked and people having kind of a lot of turmoil in their student visa process or their student process of staying in the United States. It's unfortunate. I think it's going to have a real chilling effect on student visa applications as well. Like I won't be surprised to see those application numbers go down. I think what this really means is the students who are applying for visas to the US have to be super prepared. They can't take the chance on maybe I can get a refusal and then try again. You got to be prepared from the get-go. You got to show up knowing what you want to do, be very thoughtful in your approach. Do your research, make sure you understand why you're doing what you're doing, and be as ready as possible before that first visa interview. I think that's really key now, more than it ever was in the past.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we do at Argo Visa, right? Is we work with students on preparing for their US visa interview, making sure that they know what it is they need to accomplish in their interview in that very short format. I used to say that a consultation with us is great for people with complicated cases, previous refusals, or as a luxury for people who just want to feel really confident and prepared. But these days, I think even if you're a qualified student, it really is a must do. You can't just assume because you have good intentions and you're a credible student that you're going to be approved your student visa. I think the days of just being qualified being enough could perhaps be gone. What do you think, Maggie? You served in India as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The numbers are tough, but I think it just means that maybe the risk has sort of gone up for visa applicants, and that they do need to prepare differently and prepare more intentionally, especially those sort of genuine students who have a plan and have really worked hard to be admitted to good university and have want to do this degree to turn back and enhance their career. And so we here at Argo Visa, we can help you to put together that narrative. How do you demonstrate that story to the visa officer and help them to understand that you have this credible plan? So I think preparation is just more important than ever nowadays in this current visa climate.
And we will be taking some questions from those that have joined us to watch this live stream today in a little while. So if you have a question about preparing for your student visa interview, stick with us, put your questions in the comments. We are monitoring the comments, and we will be taking questions during the second half of our webinar today. Daniel, what are you seeing among your clients? Are you hearing stories that it's getting tougher out there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've seen a number of clients over the last couple of months that were refused visas for reasons that don't make much sense to me, including students. I think that in many of these cases, I kind of wish that the clients would have come to us first. They may have not realized that they needed some help and some coaching right from the beginning. Really, when it comes to these visa interviews, especially these days, I think the first impression that the applicant makes is probably the most important. And that does mean figuring out an answer to questions like, why are you going to study at whatever school that is here? I think the days of being able to sort of memorize a response to that answer or to that question are gone. And instead, you really need a lot of practice to figure out how to speak in a way that is very natural and that will help convince at least the officer that you're actually a student that's qualified and that you didn't just memorize a whole bunch of things to try to get through the interview.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for those of you that are taking notes, I think that's tip number one is be prepared for that first question, because it is your chance to make that first impression. It's also very, very likely that it will be the only open-ended question that you get the whole interview. So it is your one chance to really put the spotlight on something about yourself that you want the officer to know, because depending on how you answer that question, the rest of the interview could be, very short. It could be very abrupt, and the questions could all be closed-ended questions, not giving you much chance to really tell the officer what you want to know about them. So that kind of brings me to my second question. As when you guys were sat at the window as former visa officers and a student walked up to your window and you asked them, why are you studying in the US, or why do you want to go to the university? What are you hoping to hear? What do you want the students to tell you that would make the visa approval easy for you?
Yeah, I'll just jump in because I can think of it right off the top of my head. What I've always wanted to hear in that situation is something that tells me who the student is, what they are, what they really want to do, and what they want to accomplish. So my first tour at the Department of State was in Northeast China, in Shenyang, China, and we would have tons and tons of student applicants who would memorize something about like the school's history or something like that. That's how they would answer the first question. And for an officer, once you've heard that a couple thousand times, you don't want to hear it anymore. And I would see my colleagues would refuse people after the first question because they were so sick of it. What we really want to hear is, why really do you want to go do this? What is your personal plan? We want to try to get to know you a little bit better so that you as the applicant are not the same as all of the other generic applicants that we get.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes me the most crazy is when I hear visa applicants talking about something that I can Google myself. If I can Google it, then it's not adding value to that conversation. I don't know about you, the applicant. I don't know you at all. So you got to give me you and not Google. You got to give me the stuff that I can't find somewhere else. Make the connections between yourself and maybe some of the Google information, right? Like you want to say this is a great school and I want to do this because I want to do this career field, and then draw the lines, draw those lines that are personal, that are about you, the person, that I won't be able to draw because I don't know you.
Yeah, just to echo that, what I always like to see when I was on the visa line, and I worked in Mumbai, which is, you're just working all day long and you see, hundreds of visa applicants, and you do hear the same stories over and over again. And what really stood out to me was when somebody showed me their personality and showed me their passion. And I think especially for student visas, that was such a positive thing for me. And, it wasn't telling me, like Tracy said about, oh, there's X number of students, or it has a great cafeteria, or has a lot of green space, or all these sort of really boring details that you can get off the school website. But, why did you choose this college? Why is this right for you? And really making it personal. So.
Yeah. Okay. So what I hear you guys saying, don't memorize the school website and regurgitate it back to me. Don't tell me something I can Google. Show some personality and let me know about your goals so that I feel like I'm getting to know you as a person, because after all, that's what we're approving, right? We're not approving the school. We're approving you, the visa applicant. And I would just add to that list, don't tell me what's on the DS-160. I'm looking at it. So I'm already bored and I'm in autopilot mode if you're just telling me what's already on the DS-160. Yeah, so I think those are some really great tips on how to nail that first question. What are some red flags besides people giving you a memorized answer, something from the website of the school? Is there anything that people can say in the first answer that is a red flag?
I would say certainly if that answer is really short or reflects even too much on just like talking about why America is great, right? Like like schools in America are great. Yeah, I know. Like we know, we know that. So don't tell me that. Tell me something. Give me a little bit more, and also like a really short answer. If it's too short, then it sort of feels like there's nothing there. Like I need, especially if I'm asking a really open-ended question, you got a great opportunity to give at least 2 or 3 sentences of information about yourself. And you should be able to kind of think about it as that a little elevator speech of, 2 or 3 sentences, a couple minutes of talking or a minute of talking that you can do to give that officer just a little bit more of who you are than just a quick one-word answer. Why are you going to the United States? Because it's great. Like that's just kind of boring. Or why are you going to that school? Well, it's a top 20 school. Okay, great. But like, give me a little bit to work with. If I have to like pull an answer out of somebody and really work hard to get answers, I'm feeling like, I don't know, what's the point? This guy doesn't want
But Tracy, officers are in such a rush and they're not even looking at you when you answer the question. They seem disinterested. They're mean. Like, what do you tell your clients when they say like, well, I didn't have a chance, or I got interrupted, or I wasn't even asked?
I mean, for me, like, I'm sure I put on a mean face too. It's a tough job. You're talking to 100 to 200 people a day. I talk to 200 people a day in both of my overseas posts. It's a long day. It's 200 decisions you're making every single day. It's exhausting. And so sometimes you're just not in the mood to be happy with people you don't know. And so, you got to give the officer a little bit of the benefit of the doubt and just take every opportunity to talk. Every single one, every question they ask, you got to shift it into a conversation and not just a one-word answer. it's on you though. It's going to be on you to kind of push it a little bit. You might get really
be
unlucky if
proactive.
it doesn't give you that chance, but most officers are going to give you a chance to at least punch out a sentence or two before they cut you off.
They do need something for their notes after all, one way or another, to justify their decision. Yeah, I agree. Even when officers aren't looking at you, they are listening to you. And so hopefully you can say something that makes them pause and look up and want to pay attention.
However, I will add into that. There's one thing I would recommend not doing, especially for the first question, is saying anything that's negative or could reflect negatively on yourself or your situation. I'm pretty certain that I've heard this before in China, where they say, "Well, I'm going to this school in the U.S. to study English because I couldn't get into a university in China," or something to that effect. You don't want to do that, even if it's true. You want to try to make your response reflect positively on yourself, rather than saying like this was the last resort or something like that. That will not help you at all.
Yeah, I always say it's hard to say no to somebody with a dream, with a positive attitude. It's much harder to say no to somebody with that attitude than somebody who comes up to the window with already like defeat in their eyes. Like, if they don't believe in their heart of hearts that they're qualified for the visa, why should I believe that they're qualified for the visa? Any red flags for you, Maggie, in that first impression?
Yeah, so to kind of expand on what you were just saying, Lisa, I think confidence is so important in this case. And I think that when you're walking up to the visa window, you want to really project the confidence of someone who is qualified for that visa, and someone who has a right to, is going to America, is going to succeed, is going to do well, has got their finances in order. And of course, everything you're saying is backing that up. But I think sometimes I would see people who would sort of walk up to the window and they would avoid eye contact, or they would, just sort of stare at their notes, or they would, have very short answers, and they just wouldn't really project that confidence. And so I think that's something to keep in mind is, how is your overall presentation, and does it support, you being qualified for the visa? Does it give the visa officer the confidence to approve your visa?
Okay, so I think our audience is clear that they need to be proactive in answering that first question. Try to say something interesting beyond just what can be Googled or is on the DS 160, and to not waste that opportunity. But then, is the answer to just give your entire life story as soon as the visa officer gives you an opening? Is that what we're saying? Daniel, I see you shaking your head no.
Yeah, no, you don't. You don't want to do that. You need to be strategic about what you say. Really, I think the art of the visa interview is to figure out the most compelling case that you have for the visa being issued, and trying to put that in the front of whatever it is that you're trying to say. So if you're going to school because you're going to the United States to study because there's like this job that you want to get back home, and you have a clear path to get to it, that this degree will open up the door for that. That's what you need to let the officer know in the first 10 seconds or something of the interview. You need to put that part out right away. So if they say, why are you going to this school? You need to figure out a way to tell this story about how this will help your development in your home country, as opposed to just, oh, I found this school on Wikipedia, or, oh, because the school was founded in 1892 or something like that.
Yeah, I like that you said it's a real art, because it is, it is a balance between knowing what is relevant to the visa officer and just and being proactive, versus making the officer feel like you're trying to take over control of the interview, or that you're giving them a bunch of irrelevant information and going to waste their time. So I think the key thing is for students to know that the three things an officer is evaluating for any student visa application is: are you a credible student? Do you have ties to your home country that are going to compel you to return after your course of studies? And does it all make people people watching today, they've taken our message and they make a great first impression answering that first question as to why they want to study in the United States. They've told the officer a little bit about their situation in their home country, why it is they want to study in the US. What's the next goal of the visa interview? Like what are you listening for as a visa officer after that first positive impression? What can the applicant say to like seal the deal to make you want to approve a visa?
I think it
Tracy?
depends a little on which direction the officer kind of goes. I usually went towards finances pretty quick because it's kind of one of the things that you're directed to look for as a visa officer is, can this person afford it? If you're going to be talking about finances, don't limit yourself to talking just about your income. If you also have assets, if you have other people who can and would contribute to your education, when they're talking about finances, they want to make sure not just that the stuff that's on your I-20 makes sense, but also that like you can pay for this stuff over time. It's so expensive to study in the United States. Even for Americans living there, it's so expensive to study in the United States. For anybody in the world, it's so expensive. So, they want to make sure that you're not going to go try and work down at the street at McDonald's and try to make the money that you need to make to that when you're not allowed to do that. Like you're not going to do stuff outside of what's allowed on your visa to be able to afford to do this. So they're checking that stuff. And when you tell them that you have not just income, but assets and other people supporting you, and maybe there's a world of people supporting you, and that's really common in your country, and you can explain a little bit of that. Take those opportunities to kind of give that little bit of extra information. For me, that's sometimes missed with a lot of my clients. They'll kind of think, oh, I just talk about the income, and you kind of forget that there's a lot of other pieces to income that aren't just your paycheck.
So more holistic financial picture. So Tracy, if I bring in property deeds for myself and all of my family members, and I shove those property deeds under that slot for you to take a look at, am I good to go?
No, don't give me documents I don't want. Let them ask you for documents if they want them. Some officers like to look at them. Most officers, I would say, don't want to look at them. They just want to have that conversation, and it needs to be genuine and honest. When you're having a genuine, honest conversation, that stuff shows. Like they're just going to ask you questions, and you're going to be able to talk about it. It's you. It's your life. It should be pretty more or less easy to talk about. Obviously, there's some pressure and stress that makes it difficult, but there's no stress because you're lying, right? Like the truth is the easiest thing to tell. So just be prepared to tell that truth in a kind of a compelling, quick way. That's the main thing.
What do you guys think about loans? When people come in and they've taken out a loan, is that a red flag for you?
I don't think necessarily. I think that the thing though is that you have to have sort of a financial plan that makes sense. If you've taken out like a major loan to finance your studies and you don't have like a good plan for how you're going to pay this loan off, or you don't really know kind of what the future is after you're studying, you're not sure about the job market, or maybe I don't know, maybe you're studying something that maybe might not have the best job outlook or something like that. That would potentially be a red flag as well. Overall, I think that sort of the financial aspect needs to make sense. And as an applicant, it's something that you should have thought about quite a bit beforehand. I think that's really what the officer is looking for.
And what about sponsor? If somebody else is helping you pay for school, Maggie, does it matter to you if it's an immediate family member, if it's a friend, if it's self-funded? Does that move the needle for you at all when you're looking at the financial situation? Oh no, Maggie, I think your connection might be a little bit slow. We'll come back. We'll come back to you. What do you think, Tracy? Does the person, if you're getting help from a relative, does it matter what the relationship is?
It depends a little on the country and what's normal for that country. It also depends a little
I
bit
think
on
it all
the
depends on the person's personal circumstances and who is sponsoring. And does the story make sense, as like we've been talking about? If your parents are sponsoring, what kind of jobs do they have? Oh, oh, oh.
well,
Okay. All right.
All right, Tracy, what were you saying?
no, that's right. So yeah, it depends a little on the country and what's normal for that country, of course. And then beyond that, I've had people who've had when the more distant the relation, the more explanation is going to be needed to sort of why is, your aunt's ex-husband's brother paying for, like if it's getting really kind of far down the line, there's got to be a reason why. And maybe it's just that they have a lot of money and they're happy to support your education, but then also why are they happy to support your education when they're not?
Yes, the why.
And the big why, because the way I always thought about it, and the way I was trained, quite frankly, is what happens if that person pulls out of the funding, if they're not going to do it anymore. Parents are less likely to pull out of it, right? It's their kid. Even siblings are not super likely to, but they're more likely to than a parent. So then, the farther away from you it gets, the more likely you might lose that funding. And that's where the concern is coming from. So being able to explain why this person is putting that money into your life is really important. And the more you can explain that connection is, especially if that connection is a close one, like it's an aunt, but they helped raise you, they were with you all the time when you were a kid or something like that, that makes more sense to me than just some really distant relative who happens to be rich. Like what happens if they don't want to do it anymore?
I think something that a lot of applicants don't realize is that it is very uncommon in the United States, in American families, for extended family members to pay for one's education. I think it's a lot more common in other cultures for family funds to be a bit more pooled or combined to help each other out. Whereas in the US, we're very much like a nuclear family setup. And so it's less common to have, an aunt or a cousin that's helping to pay for school. And so when you walk up to that visa window and you can't just assume that the officer is going to understand why an uncle would be happy to pay for his niece or nephew's education in the US. I think a lot of self-sponsored students tend to be people going for their master's degrees, ones that have already been working for a little while. They have some money saved up, and now they want to take their career to that next level. So let's give our non-traditional students a little bit of love and talk about how the dynamics change a bit when, you're not 18, but maybe you're 28 or 38 or even, 48, and you're applying for a student visa to go and study for a higher degree. What do you think is different for those applicants? What do they need to accomplish that perhaps a traditional student doesn't need to do? Do you want to start, Daniel? I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I think that if you're a non-traditional student or maybe an older student, you have a lot of working experience. I think here it's more important than anywhere else that you have a very concrete plan and that you've already thought things through, thought through implications, and that it sort of makes sense in a way. I've actually had a number of people I've done consultations with who were non-traditional students who had very interesting stories. Basically, you want to be able to explain, why it is that you're going, if it's a new career field, why it is you're going into a new direction, and especially how getting this degree will help you back home in your country. And if you have, if there's a job that you're looking into, if you have connections or something, you need to explain that, because the officer is going to apply a lot more scrutiny to your case than to other cases that they might see.
Yeah, I think, when you're young and you're 17, 18, there's this, we give young people this leeway of not knowing exactly what they're going to do next. Not, it's okay to not know exactly where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing in 5 years. You don't have to exactly justify every penny you spend on your education, because we see it as a part of, growth, personal growth. But then once you're 28, 38, I think the dollars and cents make a bigger difference in qualifying for the visa. What do you think, Tracy?
I mean, certainly, like out of India, I would say most of my applicants were master's students. So a few years of work plus a master going for a master's degree felt pretty standard for me. But once you started to get kind of into your 30s or maybe even older, I got to know why. Why are you going to go back to school? I mean, there's got to be some good, compelling reason. And if it's a second master's degree or even a second bachelor's degree for that matter, I've definitely seen some of those, and those I think are some of the hardest ones to really explain. What are you getting from this now that you didn't already have from the first one? Is it really going to be that beneficial to you? And that's when you really need to get specific about your plans for afterwards. And if the plan for afterwards is, I'm going to get a promotion, I already know, I've talked to my boss, they just need me to get this degree in this subject because my other degree was in some totally different subject. Great. Like that, but the officer needs to hear that. They don't know that you had it. They might see that you had another degree on your DS 160, but you got to kind of draw the line of your history for them. And you got to do it quick, which is the hardest part. You don't want to spend 20 minutes explaining all this stuff to them. They don't have that kind of time. But if you're able to kind of get out there, what about it? The why is really important. And you really need to know why. For a second master's or for an older student, you should have a really specific idea in mind about why you're doing what you're doing, why you're going to spend this money to go get this degree, because it's quite expensive.
Yes, be specific. I mean, I think that's why, somebody could watch all of Argo Visa's videos, all of Argo Visa's webinars, and still really benefit from a consultation, because in order to really get 100% of the way there ready for your visa consultation, you need to be able to dig down into the specifics of that individual's circumstances, know which specifics are compelling and interesting and different from what everybody else is saying. Working with a consultant or former visa officer at Argo Visa, gives you that perspective that maybe you didn't realize about yourself. So you know what to pick out and to highlight for the visa officer. I mean, that's what I spend a lot of time doing with my clients is, okay, I know you have a lot of questions and you want to, ask all your questions, but we really must take a minute to learn about you and what it is you're doing and what you want to be doing, so that I can help you mine kind of those gems in your background that we really want to see shine in the visa interview. Any last thoughts on non-traditional students? How about in China, Daniel? Are you seeing any trends in terms of student visa applicants in China, traditional or non-traditional?
Yeah, trends. Unfortunately, the trend that we're seeing is generally like a higher bar for applicants to get a visa, more refusals. And at least as I've been working with in these consultations, I've noticed that many applicants who I would have issued visas to almost like automatically end up having difficulty or being refused. This is one reason why we very strongly recommend that you come to us for a consultation before your first application, because if we can help you sort of polish things beforehand, it can be you'll have a lot more success, and you won't have to worry about being refused and then kind of fighting an uphill battle. Another thing I do want to say about especially non-traditional students is the fact that you're not 18 years old or 22 years old and applying for a visa. Don't let that intimidate you. Don't let that scare you. One of the best and most important things you can do is to go into the interview with confidence, and the officer will see the confidence in the way that you stand, in the way that you talk, sort of the look in your eyes. You want to go in with confidence and not go in completely scared. The more confidence you have, the more likely it is that you'll succeed.
So, speaking of confidence, I think a lot of people these days are using ChatGPT and other AI tools. I see a lot of businesses popping up now, like mushrooms, advertising kind of AI generated models to help people prepare for their visa interview. What do you guys think of that? Do you think they can be helpful?
I toyed around on ChatGPT for a little while just to kind of like see how it is, like what pretended to be a student tried to answer some questions or had it generate some questions for me. And it's something that I advise a lot of my clients to do, is just hop on a ChatGPT and have it make a bunch of questions for you. Take those all with a grain of salt. Just like anything, I think AI, you have to kind of use your human brain to make sure that what you're looking at makes sense. They're also, ChatGPT does offer you an opportunity to like answer the questions and do like a little like almost mock interview, like get a little feedback. That stuff I was not super keen on. I was like, some of it was okay, some of it was good feedback, and a lot of it was like, okay, sure. Sometimes it was telling them to like just keep that to a one-word answer, and you're like, no. Like, I just kind of looked at it and went like, no. So I think it can be useful. I think there are some good tools out there, and I'm sure there's going to be some new ones created. I'd be shocked if there weren't. But I think you got to still kind of look at it very carefully. There is a human, and it's a human interview, right? So at the end of the day, you're talking to a human person who's going to make that decision. And so you got to be really sure that the information you're getting from ChatGPT translates well to that human interaction, or else you're going to get totally lost. I do think for generating questions, it can be super useful, as long as you're not getting too crazy in the way you use those questions and thinking about answering every single one, but rather just, oh, this is a question I didn't really consider as a possibility. Like, maybe I should think about how I would maybe answer that. They might not ask it. There's no set of questions that the officers will ask. There's no rules that they have to say this or they have to say that. But it certainly couldn't hurt to like take a little look and have an idea of like, okay, how would I do that if I wanted to answer that question? How would it kind of come out? And see what kind of answer you think you can come up with that feels comfortable to you and feels like it's sharing a piece of yourself with that officer.
To add on to that quickly, there are two warning things I would say about ChatGPT. Number one is that all of these AI chatbots are programmed to make you feel good or to reinforce you, even if your idea is crazy or it's actually not going to work. So you have to be very, very careful about it, because if the GPT bot or whatever, if it thinks that you would like to hear this answer, it will tell you that answer, whether it's the truth or not. And then the second one that I think is more important is that if you read the way that these bots write, you know that they're not human. So you're much better off speaking with a human, like Tracy was saying, and getting feedback from a human on how your answers sound than asking a robot, which is not human and which doesn't understand this. At Argo Visa, I think one of the most valuable things that we offer is the mock interview, where you can have a mock interview, or 2 or 3 or whatever with one of us, and we can make it very, very realistic, just like the actual interview would be. That practice is very, very valuable, because we can help you figure out what you could improve on and what things you could say or how you can present yourself to make it more likely that you'll receive the visa. I don't think that any AI chatbot can help you that way.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think it's a great starting point. It's a good way to get an idea of what the questions could be like, and to get some feedback on the substance of your answers. And if you want to kind of test yourself, you can ask it to generate new and different questions just to make sure you're ready for them. But the truth of the matter is, and people aren't going to like it, but it's the truth. Two student visa applicants with the exact same answers and situation could get 2 different outcomes, because personality matters. Your delivery matters. How persuasive you are matters. And only a fellow human being can give you feedback on whether that dynamic that you're giving is working or not. ChatGPT, any AI model can never give you feedback on, do you sound committed to your answer? Do you sound like you believe your answer? Is it compelling the way you're presenting it? Are you being overly aggressive? Are you being too shy? These are the nuances that we help people calibrate in our consultations, especially the ones that can schedule a longer consultation. We have the time to do that fine tuning, that little bit of extra polishing, which can really make the difference. So on that note, Maggie, I see, unfortunately, your picture is still a bit twitchy. I know in real life you don't move like that. You're a nice, normal person. So as long as I see your picture still being a bit glitchy, we won't throw any questions to you. But there is still three of us, former visa officers. There's a lot of questions in the chat that I want to get to. But since there are three of us, I'm going to challenge us. I'm going to try to give us some of the harder questions. And let's start with this one. What is, so we're going to start with the one that reads, I wanted to know, it's about the fifth one down. I wanted to know what's the minimum amount of finances we should show for a visa interview for the F1.
So I can try to address that one. I don't think that there's a minimum, truthfully. First of all, I almost never looked at documents. I would say that's true for 90% of the visa officers, maybe more, maybe like 99% of the visa officers are not going to take a look at your financial records and say, okay, I have to see this amount in the bank account. So shifting money across bank accounts isn't really going to do you much good for the most part. Really, it's just about overall, like, where do you sit on the financial spectrum in the country you live in? Are you kind of somebody who's comfortable and like has some disposable income? There should be some extra income that's there. And is there savings? Is there some money that's been saved? And so like, it's kind of a full financial picture. It's hard to say that there's like an amount that needs to be there. And it depends very much on the country that you're in. Whether you kind of sit on a good, comfortable financial place where the officer feels like, okay, that person probably can afford to do this and take that risk. I know too, like some of it would factor into what they were doing. If I'm seeing somebody who's going to one of the top schools in the United States, is going to a top 5 school for their type of program, and it's the kind of job that's going to pay great when they're done, I know that everybody in that family is getting together to help that person pay for school, because that person's going to finance the rest of the family for the rest of their lives, depending on the country that they're in. So, you have to kind of think about, the officer's trained to think about all of those things. And so there's no number. There's no like, you have to put a specific number in your bank account to make it all work.
All right, Daniel, this next question's for you because I've seen you talk about this before. So the officer seems to be just checking the DS-160 and not actually hearing you.
Yeah, if you had seen me during my visa officer days, you would think this about me all the time, actually. So the truth is that the visa officer is listening to you and what you say, provided that the officer can hear you. I have been at posts before where the microphone system didn't work that well, so you might want to speak up. You don't want to mumble, just speak sort of normally to make sure they can hear you. When the officer's on the computer on the side, they might be doing a number of things. What they're supposed to be doing normally is they're supposed to look through your DS-160 form. They're looking for anything that stands out, like if you were refused a visa before, or if you were like arrested, or if something like that's happening. And then they're supposed to write in their case notes to say why they made the decision they made, and then they make the decision in the system. What's actually happening if the officer is like not looking at you at all is it may be that they've already made their decision and that they're chatting with a colleague. It might be that they're like looking something else up, like their email or something else. It might be the end of the shift and they're trying to figure out where to go for lunch. There's a whole bunch of like different other things that might be happening. You do want to make sure that your answers to questions, especially the first question, help you to stand out. So you're getting the attention of the officer. That's probably the best way to avoid having this type of situation. If the officer is listening to you give the same memorized speech that the last 40 applicants gave, then yeah, they're probably going to not pay much attention to you and you'll run into this case. So it's another situation where being very well prepared for that first question will help you out the most.
Just a quick follow-up for you, Daniel, because somebody else asked a question that's related to what you said here. Does a visa officer have access to an old DS-160 during a second interview after a first denial? Is that what they're looking at?
Oh, yes. And it might be what they're looking at. I don't know. But yes, they do have access to this. In fact, If you've applied for 5 visas and you've been refused 5 times, they have access to this. If you applied for a visa 20 years ago and you were refused, they'll have access to some sort of record. I'm trying to think, 2006. I'm not sure if it'll be exactly the same or not, but after a certain time, they'll have access to basically your entire application. The officer might be looking at this. Don't worry about necessarily having the wording exactly the same over the years, because the officer likely won't dig in that deep and say, oh, but you said the company's name was this, 15 years ago, and now you say it's that. Instead, just realize that they do have the ability to look at applications from the past. Chances are that they're probably looking more at the old case notes to find out what the other officer thought than at exactly what you wrote on your application.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, we have a couple questions here about travel history. So I have no travel history, but have a strong profile and a university approved and a university approval for a master's degree. Would the travel history affect my ability to get my F1 visa?
So yes and no. I mean, it depends a little again on the program. There's no one magic pill that everybody has to present or show. There's no thing that can turn the page one way or the other. I think, when I see somebody who has a strong travel history because they've just grown up traveling abroad, or they maybe even studied abroad before in their life, those kind of things are certainly pluses. There's certainly green flags in your application, but I wouldn't say no travel history is a massive red flag. Especially for students, you're young. You might not have even if you have traveled before, it might be with your family, which is a whole different kind of travel than traveling as a student or traveling as an adult. So yeah, yes and no. I wouldn't get too hung up on a lack of travel history. It's not going to necessarily be the thing that ruins your application.
Maggie, are you back with us?
Yes, I hope so. Sorry about that.
All right. Well, you've got some heavy lifting to do. You've got some making up to us. I've got an extra hard question here for you.
Okay.
I will be facing the U.S. Embassy for the 4th time. Do you have any tips for me?
Yeah. And this is tough. If you've had several visa refusals, I think what the consular officer will want to see from the get-go and want to hear is what is different about your case this time, and whether they ask it to you like that or whether they ask you a different question. The very first thing out of your mouth needs to be, my case is different because, and something that has changed, and whether your actual situation has changed or whether you are presenting it in a different way. Think about how did they not understand me last time, and how can I get them to understand me? What do I need them to understand about my case immediately? And you'll probably only have one question, maybe 2 if you're lucky, and you have to take advantage of that time. So that's where I think that preparation with a professional like us, those of us at Argo, former visa officers, is so important, because you will have such a short amount of time to make that good impression. And so, you want to take advantage of it, make the most of it, shape that narrative, and you'll just have that one chance really to try to get it right. And it is possible. When I was on the line in India, I would, there were some times when people surprised me, and people, gave me new and different information, helped me see their case in a different way that I feel like previous officers maybe weren't listening, or maybe they weren't provided with the information. So it's not impossible, but it is a big challenge. So I think you do need expert preparation in those cases.
Oh, for sure. How about you, Tracy? Would you counsel them to start off kind of, addressing the elephant in the room, as we would say, by just at that first available opportunity, talking about those previous refusals, or would you try to be as normal as possible and wait until you're asked?
I mean, it's no secret. The officer, it knows that you have previous refusals. It's one of the first things that they see when they scan your barcode in and they look through your DS-160, and then boom, they see you have prior refusals. So there's no avoiding it. I think you're best off just being prepared to shift the focus to what's new about your application, and whether it be like Maggie said, something that's changed in your profile, or just information you didn't get to share before. And it might be that you have to kind of dig deep to figure out what that information is that they didn't know about you before, or that perspective that they didn't know. You want the officer's brain is going to go towards no because they've seen so many no's. And I think you have to kind of break their mindset a little bit very early on, by showing them that there's some perspective that they didn't consider, and get them on your side so that they're then thinking about you and all of the stuff. And they're looking critically at all the stuff that their colleagues did and saying, okay, well, they knew this, and this, but they didn't know this. And does this new information change that other information? And they're going to start looking more critically, but you got to get them there because they're not going to go there by themselves.
I think the key for going into a visa interview once you've been refused is understanding why you were refused in the first place so that you can overcome that challenge in your next visa interview. Which leads me to this question that I absolutely love. And this one's going to be for, you can start us off, Daniel. But, you know, you've been refused. You're not told why you're refused. And yet, when you apply next time, what does the DS-160 ask you? So this person asks, why does the visa officer want to know why you were denied in your previous interview? And does it matter?
Yeah. So this box on the DS-160, I think of as kind of like a trap. My recommendation is that you probably want to write something to the effect of, I didn't have the time to explain. I couldn't explain my study plan, why I'm going to study, and keep it short and keep it sort of basic. I've done many, many interviews like this where people have written a whole paragraph or 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs in that box. You don't want the officer to sit down and try to read through this and understand what you're saying. It takes time and it will distract them. And also you want to try to avoid trying to guess as to what the reason might have been, because if you guess wrong, if you say, oh, well, maybe you're refusing my visa for study because, I don't know, because I'm working part-time at a cosmetics place or something, but the officer didn't know that and there was a different reason. You want to avoid that. You want to avoid giving them additional reasons to refuse your visa. So I always recommend keep it very, very simple and generic. And instead of worrying so much about necessarily trying to explain that to the officer, let's work on the presentation, how you answer the first question and how you can demonstrate change.
Maggie, you're our DS-160 guru. Do you have thoughts on why the form asks the question and what you can say to help yourself there, or what common mistakes you see?
Yeah. So I think people need to keep it very positive and keep it concise and short. So you're answering the question if you were refused, minimal, factual information there, and then you can use that space to your advantage, maybe 1 or 2 sentences that maybe issues a clarification if you feel like things were misunderstood before, something positive in your case that they didn't realize, or maybe if something has changed in your situation, you can also use that space to, again, couple 2 or 3 sentences, put that in there. Stay away from long, negative rambles about, oh, the consular officer didn't understand me, or I was very nervous and I said the wrong thing, and yada yada. You want to keep away from that. Keep it positive, keep it factual, and if you need to issue some clarifications or updates to your situation in that space, go ahead and do so. And that's actually part of what we do with the DS-160 service. A very large part of it is helping people to really finesse that particular box and use it to their best advantage. And a lot of people, specifically sign up to our DS-160 service because they want help in answering that question. So if you need some help with that, please do reach out to the Argo Visa team, and we'd be happy to review your DS-160 in depth. And that will be former consular officer like myself who does that review, and then we will issue suggestions based on our experience as to how you can maximize that space.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe one last question. This one is one that we get a lot, so that's why I'm picking it. It says, I was refused a visa today, second time, sorry, under Section 214B, with a specific reason stated that I have not demonstrated that I have the ties that will compel me to return to my home country after my travel to the US. Can I reapply right away? Or should I wait for 3 months let's say more. What do you guys think? Does timing matter after you've been refused? Tracy, you want to start us off?
I think, like so many things, it does depend on the applicant. If there's not going to be a major change in your profile, then waiting is not going to make a major difference. If you're going to show up with the same answers to your questions, then waiting 4 months, waiting a year, quite frankly, isn't going to make a difference. So you might as well just go right away. And I think for most people, when you've got multiple refusals, then we need to start thinking when waiting can be good is when you're going to use that time to sort of address potential pockets in your application, and whether it be you don't have a real plan for afterwards, and so maybe you need to spend some time sitting and thinking about that, or working and getting some job experience that will help you develop that plan for yourself a little bit more strongly. That can be one really great use of that time. Or maybe you didn't get into a great school and you want to try to get into a better one next time, so you take the time to put together a stronger application, or take some extra classes and then put together a stronger application. That's when waiting can really be more valuable. But otherwise, if nothing changes, I don't see any point in waiting. You might as well keep going. I would advise to get some help for the next time around, so that third interview comes out much stronger than those first two, so that you're really, again, putting your best foot forward really quickly, like we've kind of been talking about.
Yeah, if you go in and say the same things, you're going to get the same result, for sure, without a doubt. Daniel, did you have another perspective?
I think that's actually very, very good advice that Tracy gave. And again, I would want to sort of reemphasize that this is the sort of place where our services can be very valuable to you. This is, for example, the sort of situation where you might want to do a mock interview or two with a former visa officer, so we can sort of tell you how you come across, and so you can know what things you need to improve on. That can be very, very difficult to do otherwise, and it's most effective if you're talking with somebody who's actually done a lot of student visa interviews and who kind of knows how these go and understands the mentality that consular officers have.
Maggie, final thoughts on when to reapply?
I think just to echo what Tracy and Daniel have said, I think there's no magic number. We get this question a lot. Oh, should I wait 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, et cetera? And there's really not, there's not a special time period that needs to elapse before you can be, approved. I mean, you could be approved the very next day if you come in and you have a different story and a different presentation that convinces the officer. I think timing is not something to focus on. It's more on your own preparation there. And if you're ready to demonstrate, a change to the visa officer.
Yeah. And it's, oftentimes applicants or clients will ask me, what are the chances that I'm going to be approved, or should I apply, again right away? And now we say, let me answer that question after the mock interview, because to Daniel's point, like, if you're doing as well as you can, if you're as prepared as possible, if you're persuasive and committed to your answers, and you're still getting refused, then yeah, maybe you need to change something more fundamentally about your application. To Tracy's point, a better university or something like that. But if there's still room for improvement, then I know the issue wasn't maybe just your situation, but it was the delivery, it was your performance in the visa interview, and let's take some time, let's improve that. And then I think part of what we do that is so valuable to people is we give an honest assessment about, what their chances are, what their weaknesses are, what their strengths are. And only when we know the weaknesses and the strengths of an application can we truly say, like, this is something that can be helped, this is something that you can change, and this is what you need to do before your next visa interview. So it's a difficult one to answer. I think it depends on a lot of different facets, and of course, not the least of which, how determined the client is to go to school, this year in particular, for example. What's clear to me in seeing, all the questions that people have put in the chat today, and we've had a lot of great questions. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Is a lot of people are watching us today have already been refused. And so, I think the takeaway here is, if you haven't been for a visa interview yet, get the help that you need. Make sure you're prepared so that you're not in the situation of going into a visa interview post refusal. If you've already been refused, all hope is not lost. I mean, even though refusal rates are going up, there are still, untold number of visa applicants that are approved every day and, being admitted to the United States to pursue their dreams of studying in the US. So don't give up hope, but do know that if you just go in and do the same thing, you're going to have the same result. You have to understand why you were refused, what was missing from your presentation that first time when you were refused. How do you overcome the challenge that you had? What's the strategy there? And then practice, practice, practice through mock interviews. If any of this sounds like something that you want to learn more about, visit us at argovisa.com. We have, as Maggie mentioned, the DS-160 service, and we also have our consultation services. When you sign up for a consultation at argovisa.com, we manually review your questionnaire, your answers to the questions that we pose to you, and we make sure that you're matched with the former visa officer that's best suited to help you. And as you can see from today's session today, we have a really talented group of former visa officers that are here, that want to help, that have great advice, a lot of experience, not just in adjudicating visas, but also a lot of experience in helping people improve their communication technique, reframe their narrative, understand what the strengths that they have are that a visa officer would find compelling. So if you want the best possible chance at being approved your visa interview, come see us at argovisa.com. Thank you for everybody for joining us today, for the great questions. Thank you, Tracy, Daniel, and Maggie, for your amazing insights. I love working with you all, and I love the team that we have.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.